It's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023, 2 p.m. This regular Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order. First, if you will, let's join Mr. Trask in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we come humbly before you in a time of a natural disaster, and the deaths and injuries of those who are caught in the wake of the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria burden our hearts. We pray that you will comfort the families of those who were injured and welcome those who have died into your heavenly kingdom. We are hopeful that your grace and love will be with those who have suffered and those here present today who share in their pain and loss. This we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
all are present.
Thank you. We have no proclamations tonight, so the first thing on the agenda is presentation by our library member, Helen Price.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyway, as you all are aware, back in October of 2001, the Board of Commissioners approved a new interlocal agreement. And part of that agreement, amongst other things, directed the Library Board of Trustees to use funds in various certificate of deposits, money market, and operating account to immediately upgrade the library's technology and to modernize the interior of the library building. And as of today, we have spent $532,000 of that $989 that was in all those accounts. Now, I noticed that the interlocal agreement included the operating account in the figure, but because that number goes up and down as we get checks from the various communities and payroll and whatnot, we're kind of letting that stay pretty stagnant until we see how it all shakes out. But we did spend some money out of the operating account for a children's program. Anyway, so far, our library now has new computers, a new roof, upgrades, software, some new furniture, new air conditioning, new printers, and a copy machine. And our copy machine makes good money for our library, believe it or not. New front and rear doors. We remodeled the computer space and the break room, and now the bathrooms are completed. There's a new sign. We've upgraded the interior lighting. The plumbing and the electrical had to be upgraded with the new computers and the new bathrooms. Painted it inside and out, new telephone system, and upgraded the landscape as well. So I think if anyone goes to the library, they'll see a lot of these improvements, and you'll see everybody there is a lot happier. Still left to do at this point is the parking lot. The parking lot is sloped such that it's not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, so we had to have an engineer kind of reconfigure it, and that part is now in the permitting stage. Library is functioning very well. At this point, we're at about 90% of our budget, well, where we should be, prorated to this date. So it's doing well. We met with our auditor at our last meeting, and he kind of went over things, and we questioned him about a couple of things. Everything looks correct. We've upgraded the bylaws of the library to reflect the interlocal agreement. And I want to give some kudos and a shout out to Mr. Stan Silverstein. He's been a very effective interim library director. He's held that position 3 times now in the last 20-some years that he's been over there. And just to give you an example, there are currently 31 adult programs at our library. Last year was 5, and the attendance is up 700%. This is everything from book clubs to movies to investment clubs. I mean, all sorts of things going on. It's pretty nice. There are 9 children's programs, up from 7 last year, and children's attendance is up 300%. This year we had a patron sponsor a haiku contest, which is a form of poetry, and we received 27 very good entries, and the group picked a winner and awarded them some money. And so now I think we're going to be dividing that out. We'll have an adult category and a child's category and make this kind of an ongoing contest. In general, the library is doing very well. I just left there. It's packed. I mean, there was a line and Stan's right at the counter helping people. So and we do have a lot of like the number 1 group of people that utilize our library are Madeira Beach residents. The number 2 group are people from out in the county that come over and use and buy a library card from us. It's not one of the other towns. So that's really interesting. But we've done a lot of outreach to the other towns. Treasure Island, we had a vending machine, a book vending machine over there for a while, but now they're remodeling their golf course. So we're moving it over to their new city hall, and it's more people. It's not totally just put your card in and drop a book out anymore, but we'll see if we can get that back. The Gulf Beaches Library Employee Manual has not been updated or looked at since May of 2012. So I reviewed that manual and suggested some edits to the board. We then conducted like a half-a-day workshop about what we would like to see in there and out, made notes, and we're gonna run that by an attorney before we make any changes, so that they can make the appropriate revisions and see if there's any policies in there I might have missed. And finally, the library board needs some guidance from you all on a clause in the interlocal agreement. And it's section 5(1)(c), and I'll just read it to you. This is one of there was like, I think 3 tasks that the cities placed on the board. It was 1, don't change the footprint, 2, spend that excess money, and 3 is, let's see if I can find it. It requires that the library adopt a policy directing undesignated fund balance reserves shall not exceed 10% of the total undesignated fund balance. And our accountant does not know what that means. I'm not sure. He stated that it seems to require our undesignated funds to be 10% of itself. So he doesn't know how to figure that out. I've always interpreted this to mean any excess funds in the library's bank accounts are capped at 10% of the annual budget. But maybe I'm wrong, but I think we need some clarification. Maybe we need to have all the towns draft something that says that makes a little more sense, so that our accountant can make sure that we're staying within the 10%. So if you guys could just discuss that. I mean, I'm happy to I'll take a stab at what I just said, write it down. And if you all agree that that's what it means, I'll take it to the Board of Trustees and have each city then take it to their board and agree. Go ahead.
During discussions on the interlocal agreement, that was discussed. Originally, we had like $480,000 in reserves, and the initial amount that we had decided on was $100,000. Treasure Island came back and wanted it to be 10% of the total budget. So what you are saying is correct. That was the intent of that.
Well, maybe we get a little addendum drafted and signed by all the towns so that future boards will know what that means. And we can certainly work on abiding by that 10%, but I wasn't sure if that was based on annual budget or what was there presently or whatever, but
Yeah, it
Anyway.
was based on annual budget.
okay. All right, well, that's how we'll go forward, because we're in budget discussions right now, obviously. We will have our budget to you in April. And then if you look at the interlocal agreement, you guys have until, I think, 1st of July to approve it, and it goes back and forth or whatever, but, so that's something we'll have to talk about sooner than your regular budget discussions. Where those dates came from, I don't know, but that's all right.
Okay.
Anyway.
Um,
And I put my email on the bottom of the memo. Please just email me or text me, whatever. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll see you again in a few months with our proposed budget.
okay.
And I can
thank you.
tell you, it's my intention that if we still have a lot of money in the bank, we're going to continue to give the towns a discount on their portion.
Thank you. And I've got to say, this is outstanding. This is what the interlocal agreement and the revamping of the library was all about, to move us into the 21st century.
Yeah.
So I've got to say kudos to everyone involved on the tremendous job y'all are doing over
It's a
there.
good board. We're clicking on all cylinders now, and everybody's very helpful. So it's looking good over there.
Great.
And with Stan at the helm, it's really nice. All right, thank you.
Next is public comment. If there is anyone that has any public comment on any item that is not on tonight's agenda, please step forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Next is the consent agenda, approval of minutes.
Okay, I've got a question or a change on page 38. At the bottom of the page, it talks about the people that were in favor or against the Johns Pass Activity Center. And I kind of kept a running list when people talked, and it's really different than what this list is. So I'm thinking we either Joe Jorgensen and Tom Edwards, I would have put them as against, or just take this whole section out of the minutes. Because I'm not sure that we should be saying whether people are for or against something in putting, unless they actually say that they are for or against something.
That's as I recollect, I think you're right.
I'll get Laura to re-listen to that and fix that and take that out. If maybe reword it.
I mean, that's where it comes from, is from what was stated at the meeting. That's the transcription. But certainly if we can
We'll listen.
have it
to
removed, we'll take a review it and have it removed if that's
Yeah.
your
If-
desire.
Okay.
Okay, because like Mr. Jorgensen said, you know, he originally was for it, and then he thought it encompassed too much, and said some things like that. I don't remember what Tom Edwards said, but I didn't take it as a strong vote for.
We'll remove that.
Yeah,
I mean,
we can
you
just
can
say
remove
these are
that.
the individuals I
Yeah.
mean, these were the individuals that spoke.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that
That's-
makes
I think
sense.
that's-
Yeah, because I agree with him, because when Joe came up, his initial statement was, if I remember correctly, something along the lines of he was for it. He just wasn't for all the additional area that was, if it was just Johns Pass Village itself, he was fine. Just wasn't for the additional areas. The rest of them, I can't remember exactly what they said, but I specifically remember Joe saying that. So I would just say these are the people that spoke. Leave it at that. I don't think we need that in the minutes on what side they were on.
So is there a motion on approval with that exception?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the exception noted by Commissioner Hudson.
You're referring to the minutes. You approved
Yes.
the minutes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Tom, should I amend that?
I think that was all understanding. There was a yes coming back and forth. So no, you voted on it. I think we all understand it was approval of the minutes with those changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next is public hearings. First is ordinance 2023-04 prescribing the manner of holding the March 14th, 2023 municipal election and providing for the polling locations. Second reading.
May I read it?
Mr. Trask, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-04, an ordinance of the city of Madeira Beach, Florida, calling for a municipal election on March 14th, 2023 for the purpose of electing a mayor, providing for 2 charter amendments, providing for publication, authorizing election expenditures, identifying the Pinellas County Canvassing Board as the canvassing board for the March 14th, 2023 municipal election, providing for polling places, providing for repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances of conflict herewith to the extent of such conflict, and providing for an effective date. That was the second final reading of ordinance 2023-04 by title only.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? Are there any public comments on this? Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-04?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2023-04 prescribing the manner and holding of the March 14th municipal election and providing the polling locations.
I second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is ordinance 2023-08, Article 5, readoption of purchasing code and repeal of ordinance 2021-03, second reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask.
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-08, an ordinance of the city of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending certain sections of Article 5, purchase and contracts of Chapter 2, administration of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Madeira Beach, provide for the increase of the $15,000 sealed bids threshold to $30,000, provide that notice to bidders shall be published on the city's website, to provide that notice for all bids may be given by posting a request for proposals on a web-based notification and delivery system used for public solicitations, to provide for the deletion of printed advertisement, posting, or publication in that portion of a newspaper normally given to legal advertisements, and for the requirement that all bids, whether posted or advertised, bear the title request for bids. To provide for the deletion of requirements of a penal bond, a performance bond, and that all bidders shall possess a municipal or county occupational license. To address non-responsive bids, to address the amount of a bid bond, to provide revisions regarding the acceptance of bids, to provide revisions regarding the evaluation of bidder responsibility, to provide that change orders shall be approved by the city manager, to provide that to provide for an increase to the dollar thresholds and the regulations governing the purchase and sales criteria. Creating section 2-194 to provide for contracts and engagements for personal and professional services of attorneys at law, financial consultants, experts, and other personal and professional services without competitive bidding, repealing ordinance 2021-03, and providing for an effective date hereof. That was the second and final reading of ordinance 2023-08 by title only.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion amongst the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any discussion. I had some questions from residents, and I just wanted to clarify that and just to put it on record that I contacted the city manager of St. Petersburg Beach, Treasure Island, and the mayor of Clearwater Beach. And we are well in the ballpark at the 30,000 threshold for that amount. So if anybody, a couple of people had concerns, we're well in the ballpark with that.
Yeah, that we had that discussion before we ever raised it initially, so. Is there any public comment on this item? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2023-08.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini.
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is ordinance 2023-11. Amending the comprehensive plan for the city of Madeira Beach to adopt the changes identified in the regularly scheduled evaluations and appraisal of the comprehensive plan, first reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask?
Mayor Commissioners, this is ordinance 2023-11, an ordinance of the city of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the comprehensive plan of the city of Madeira Beach to adopt the changes identified in the regularly scheduled evaluation and appraisal of the comprehensive plan, providing for conflict, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. That was the first reading of ordinance 2023-11 by title only.
Thank you. Mr. Morris? Or Jerry, y'all take your pick.
So
Pick it out.
Jerry's going to be presenting
Okay.
the ordinance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, Jerry Murphy, University of Florida, planning consultant to the town. So what you have before you is the evaluation and appraisal review and report, the recommendations of changes that will go to the state after this hearing, if you approve it. We discussed this at the workshop, and the LPA, as I mentioned at that time, has had 4 or 5 meetings looking at each element in detail. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or provide any sort of overview of the document, whatever the pleasure of the board.
Thank you, Jerry. I know this has been being worked on for a number of years now. And everybody and his brother have looked at it, and as I know you have, and you do this every day in working with different cities. So I've gone through it. I really have no questions. I feel confident in our staff and in you in taking care of the city on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I might,
Go ahead.
I just have use this as an opportunity to comment on page 118. Policy 4.198. And I say use this as an opportunity to an upcoming workshop. The redevelopment within the area adjacent to Johns Pass Village and east of Pelican Lane must be in character with the overall design theme of the area. With all that's been discussed with the Johns Pass Activity Center and resident comments, I just want to make sure that there are policies in place to keep the fishing village theme and character as a fishing village.
Yes, and I think that's the intent of this policy. The changes that are here, just basically some language changes to de-shall the policy and eliminate type of character. Character is character.
And that's the way I read it. I just want, like I said, use this as an opportunity to bring that discussion in a workshop to make sure that there are other things within our policies and comprehensive plans to, I don't know if an architect or whatever, to make sure that we don't lose that character. I don't know that there's anything in place that really does that for us now. I don't know that the Duani plan ever did that. But I feel it's important, listening to all the residents, that that is maintained.
And what will probably happen, depending on how the activity center amendment goes forward, your land development regulations will then be amended, and there'll probably be a series of workshops with the community to make sure that those regulations do exactly that.
Perfect. That'll go a long way.
Yeah, and I noticed here, policy 4.1.9.6, 2 lines above this. Encourage redevelopment, revitalization, and assist in maintaining the beach community theme. So actually, we are addressing it a little bit.
You have policy direction, and once that activity center situation is settled, then you'll go forward with land development regulations to implement those policies, and that's when more detail will be developed.
Right.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
Hey, my question is on page 107 and 108. And I guess I'm still kind of struggling the purpose of this document. I know we give it to the state, we give it to the county, but it doesn't really feel like it's a plan going forward. It just sounds like it's all the available options, and we can, to kind of protect us, that what we're going to do is somewhere within all these options.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this particular area of the plan is directed toward land use, and that's the majority of the underpinning for your land development regulations that actually implement the various zoning districts that correspond to these future land use map categories.
Okay, so for the temporary lodging densities, we also put an ISR, impervious surface ratio, and we have 0.95 for all of those. And it's like, if we're trying to get at more people-oriented, walkers and bikers and things like that, just seems like we're using up way too much, or there's not enough room for vegetation or other things. It's all going to be concrete and hot and not what we'd want. Gardens and things like that would make more sense, or at least more vegetation of something to be cooler and to protect people. And do we want an ISR of 95, or can we slide that down a little bit?
I wouldn't suggest you do it as part of this ordinance, because this is an update ordinance, and those ISRs and FARs are not changed. They're in black print, so that's exactly what you have existing. I'm under the impression, I could be wrong, that some of that will change with regard to Johns Pass and the activity center in terms of their temporary lodging, but this is not unreasonable. And generally, you're going to find moving forward, your temporary lodging is probably going to be redeveloped at whatever height is allowed. And as you get higher, that floor area ratio allows the building to be compressed, because that's the total of all floors as a ratio to the area of the lot.
Okay, impervious surface ratio, those is how much of the land is covered, correct?
Yes.
So less coverage is at some point is better than total coverage, and 0.95, we're pretty much total.
And I would say anything that's been developed under this existing plan has probably maximized that ISR. And so going backwards is always more difficult
Yeah.
than going forwards, but it's something you can certainly consider. I just wouldn't recommend you do it at this
Here.
point in this
Okay.
ordinance.
And then the other question is 113, and this is more for everybody up here, and for Robin. Policy 4.1.4.3, continue to seek opportunities for public land acquisition and management for recreational conservation and preservation areas. Should we be having a talk on that? You know, is there something with the Holden property where we can steal a little sliver of land next to the bridge to put in a park or something? Or do we not want to put in additional parks because we have to maintain the ones that we have? Is that something we want to talk about sometime?
And just to add to that, I did have that conversation with the current owner as to whether that could happen in receiving updates as to what the status of the property was. So we can certainly continue doing, I mean, this is very important to do that as we have limited space and land. So I mean, I agree, it should be the reason why it's in here, but yes, we will have those conversations and discussions going forward.
And this plan encourages that, right?
Yes, sir.
That kind of discussion.
Okay, you're off the hook from me.
Okay, anyone else?
I just have one more comment.
Okay.
When you, and it really doesn't, I mean, maybe it does, it's really more addressed to the city manager. When you go to the website, City of Madeira Beach, and you look up the master plan, my experience is you get the Duani plan. Can you also, I would imagine you can pull this up as well.
Yeah, I think this is on there, or if not, it will be, but comprehensive plan is under the community development or development services link on our website, but
Right.
we'll make sure it's on there.
All right,
Absolutely.
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
I move we pass ordinance 2023-11, amending the comprehensive plan of the city of Madeira Beach to adopt the changes identified in the regularly scheduled evaluation and appraisal of the comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is ordinance 2023-14, amendment to chapter 54, solid waste, first reading and public hearing. Mr. Trask?
Thank you, Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-14, an ordinance of the city of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending chapter 54, solid waste of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Madeira Beach to amend the definitions of collection center, curbside collection program, garbage can and trash can, to delete refuse as a mandatory service subscription, to add debris accumulation from contractors as waste to be removed by the owner, to amend references to trash container, to add trash to the items prohibited to be buried or burned as garbage, to require that a garbage can or trash can shall have a 64-gallon capacity and that such receptacles shall be provided by the city, to provide for placement of containers for trash collection, to provide for exclusions therefore, to require concealment of garbage and trash cans after collection, to provide for timing of curbside placement and removal of trash cans, to delete section 54-62 regarding inspection and condemnation of containers, to provide for conflict, to provide for severability, and to provide for an effective date. That was the first reading of ordinance 2023-14 by title only.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst the commission? I think we all went over this pretty well at the workshop, so.
Mr. Mayor, just to add just two quick things. One, it's the ordinance as discussed previously includes that the city will be providing the 64-gallon container. Previously, it was 32 gallons provided by residents, and also that the placement of the container to occur, we switched from sunset to 5:30. So no earlier than 5:30 PM to place the container, so it can be placed out while it's still daylight outside.
Okay. Anyone else? Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion for ordinance 2023-14?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2023-14.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is King of the Beach Fishing Tournament contract with Old Salts Fishing Foundation.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, we will bring this item back at the next meeting. We have to make some corrections to the item. Apologies for that.
So it will be at the next regular meeting or at the workshop,
Actually, I think we'll have it at the
Regular
work,
meeting.
at both the workshop and well, we've already workshopped it, but
right?
I mean, you have to approve it at a regular meeting.
Right, so, okay.
Be at the regular meeting in March 8th.
Okay. Next is extension of engineering services contract. Director Wepfer.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. This is what we brought before you at the workshop. As we are requesting to do the final extension of the contract with what is now known as TransUnion, I believe is their current name. Is that it?
Trans Systems.
Trans Systems, I'm sorry. As I've listed in the memo are some of the ongoing project list with just Public Works, but as previously discussed, they also help out with planning and zoning and FEMA mitigation downstairs. I'm here to answer any questions.
I requested this to be reviewed and an RFP be put out, I think well over a year ago. Why are we getting down to the wire on this to where we've got to even file this extension? I have a real problem with that.
We will be issuing an RFQ, I think within the next couple of weeks that will be going out. And just where we, as I mentioned during the workshop, that we let this continue too long, but we are making those corrections. All we are asking is for continuity with the existing projects, but once we get the replies back, that will come back before you, and to choose an engineer of record, this can be terminated given the provisions that are in the agreement.
So the 30-day out.
I believe so.
Yes,
So we're talking about filing a 1-year extension with a 30-day out.
It's an extension until January 7th, 2024.
So
A little bit less than a year.
basically a year. Yeah. Well, that's honestly, I'm not a happy camper. I think they should have moved and come before us quite a while ago. That's all I've got to say. Anyone else? Any public comment on this? Is there a motion on the floor on extension of engineering services?
I'll make a motion to extend the engineering services contract.
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
No.
The motion carried 4-1.
Next is Shoemaker Advisors, Florida Services Agreement. This is the group that does our lobbying in Tallahassee. Robin, do you want to take this?
Yeah, just as we discussed in the workshop, this is to approve an agreement to continue to utilize Schumacher Advisors. We have been using them at least for the prior year, likely longer than that, but in the time that I've been here. And we've been extremely pleased with their work. They're extremely knowledgeable of not only knowing the ins and outs of Tallahassee, the legislative process, but also their interactions and their relationships with existing legislators. And so we simply would like to request to have the agreement approved to continue to utilize them. Last year, we received a little over 2.5 million in direct appropriations, and Schumacher was quite integral to obtaining and the funding for us. We would be fees just a slight increase from the year before to $4,500 a month with up to $250 for out-of-pocket expenses. And as I stated last time, this is as a professional services within our city code allows us to proceed without obtaining the competitive bids.
This firm actually represents many cities even in this area. So and we can pretty much get in touch with their representative at any time of the day or night. They have done a good job for the city. So any other comments?
No.
Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the state lobbying services agreement with Shoemaker Advisors.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Johns Pass Dredging Grant Agreement for $1,556,000. Mr. Gomez?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this item, again, as we discussed at the workshop, is simply showing the agreement that we have, the grant agreement with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for the dredging for the stated amount. We're just requesting approval. This was completed within about the last 6 weeks, but just coming for you now to approve the grant as the work continues on, well, the preliminary work, as I had mentioned during the workshop with our consultant.
Okay. Floor is open for discussion. Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection Standard Grant Agreement for Johns Pass dredging in the amount of $1,556,000.
Is there a second?
A second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini.
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is Aptum Environmental and Infrastructure LLC, agreement to perform various Johns Pass dredging work.
So, Mr. Mayor and Commission, again, related to the previous item, this is approving the contractor that we are using for the dredging project. The contractor Aptim is currently a coastal management contract. So we're piggybacking with Pinellas County. Their agreement is set to be with the county is set to be renewed, renew agreement issued later this month. Because that agreement with the county expires in March, and we will likely bring back a new agreement next month just to ensure that we're still utilizing the county's contract. But this is Aptim Environmental and Infrastructure LLC, who is performing, as I stated last time, all the preliminary work up through the issuing the bid, the construction oversight, and the current total amount not to exceed $136,727 for all the work.
Okay.
And I've included not a copy of their agreement, but also a copy of the Aptim's agreement with Pinellas County.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the commission?
Full speed ahead.
Any public comment on this item? Do I have a motion on passing the Aptim environmental agreement?
I'll make a motion to approve the Aptim Environmental Infrastructure LLC agreement to perform the various Johns Pass dredging work.
Is there a second?
Second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks.
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Next is Duke Energy's binding cost estimate for the final phase 3 of Gulf Boulevard undergrounding utilities. Director
Good afternoon
Whitmer.
again. So what I have before you today is the binding cost estimate from Duke Energy. This is specifically just for Duke Energy to cover the cost to finish the undergrounding. So as we talked about for months, we were expecting it to come in at 2.1 or 2.2, but as you can see, it's significantly higher. I do have Mark in the audience with our utility consultants. This covers the material, the equipment, and to remove the poles at the end of the project. With that being said, we do have a meeting set up tomorrow with Duke Energy to discuss the cost of this, because we were all expecting it to be much lower, along with Mayor Queen. He will be in attendance. So we're not really sure what's going to come out of that meeting tomorrow. But what I'm asking is really do we want to proceed to finish Gulf Boulevard? Which is my recommendation. So we're not continuing to raise the cost. Or do we want to get this down to that original cost that we were looking at, which is what we had budgeted? So really, I'm just looking for a recommendation.
This was, as I remember, about 400,000 more.
About 600,000 more.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have in your packet, I have a breakdown which was provided to us from Mark and his team, which shows with this binding cost estimate, we are going to be significantly over budget. But this does also include Gulf Lane. I did not mention that. So we are working on the Gulf Lane project, and we were able to, with Duke Energy, they have one of their team members design part of Gulf Lane to actually Gulf Boulevard to go onto Gulf Lane. So then that just initiated us to continue that and to do Gulf Lane while we're doing that roadway project. So that's about 2 or 3 blocks.
Was Gulf Lane not included in the original estimate?
No, sir.
So what if we back Gulf Lane back out of there? I mean, I would hope Duke Energy wants to start hardening its own equipment at some point
Right.
to where the cities aren't having to foot all these bills. I mean, this is to Duke Energy's benefit for this being done.
We fully agree with that. And I think our meeting tomorrow will help us try to figure out why the costs are coming in at 60 to 70% higher than what they initially told us.
I wonder if we should hold off on any approval of this.
I was just thinking the same.
This current BCE is good for 180 days. But the problem with holding that up, maybe we could ask to break out Gulf Lane. So we can ask to break out Gulf Lane for that 2 blocks that we are originally, unless we want to decide to not underground Gulf Lane at this time. We were just trying to prepare and move into roadway projects and undergrounding at the same time.
Yeah, but that's substantially over budget. And if we've added stuff, which is really pushing it over budget, then maybe that's something we don't look at now. And maybe at some point, we need to have a discussion about Duke Energy about getting their equipment underground, because I've done kind of a personal drive-through inspection of a lot of these poles. Otherwise, they're going to be replacing a lot of poles that are bent way over. And I know they're doing core tests on poles to determine whether or not they do need to be replaced. So it might behoove them to get a sharp pencil on some of these figures they're giving us.
I think our meeting tomorrow will help determine that. We can move this to the next meeting. I had this on the agenda before the meeting for tomorrow was set up, so.
So I mean, would there be any major damage if we just said, let's postpone till after the meeting and have the same discussion again?
I think we'll still be in that timeline.
Yeah, we're still.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
Mark.
I'm gonna bring Mark up because he's a little more aware.
Careful, Mark, we've got guards at the rear door. You can't get out.
They let me in, so I'm hopeful. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I got here late, but it looks like it was just in time. So just a few considerations. I think from our position, similar to what Megan said, we've got the ability to kind of postpone this thing. I will say that with a caveat. So here's what we're looking at. The BCE is a lengthy process, and we've got to this point, which has been a struggle, to say the least.
It started in 2020.
Yeah, so what we were cautious on our side is that if we go through and we strip back some of the project, then it will require them to go back to the drawing board, reduce things. So one thing that we had talked about internally was that, we know that the county's providing the funding for this project. One thought would be, do we just approve not to exceed that budgeted amount while we're working with Duke? So we give them that because we want to take advantage of what the county's giving us at a bare minimum. We did say, what are some options with scaling that back? And unfortunately, it required them taking a few blocks out. We didn't like that scenario. So that's kind of the meeting tomorrow, is to say, how can we get closer to this original number? We know inflationary pressures took place, but we also know that it took time to get the BC. So we're concerned with how much of that did we bear because of the delay. So these are conversations that we'll have tomorrow. But, one thought would be, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes to get this project going. I know that we're wanting to try to hurry up and get the undergrounding and get this thing done. So I would hate to hold up the BCE, but to your point, and I think to our point, we don't like that excess amount, and we need to work through those issues. So maybe one thought would be, Golf Lane might not get us that full amount, or it might. So we can come back with those options, but one would be at least get what the county's already got in the budget and, get that to Duke. I think that's similar to what Bill's looking to do. And then kind of look at, say, all right, now, what do we do with that remaining 400, 500, 600,000 amount? How can we get that down to something reasonable, or we cut it off to that point? So just throwing it out there, something to consider.
Well, I don't want to be spending money just because it's there.
Agreed.
100%.
100%.
And honestly, I would rather see 150th worked on rather than Gulf Lane worked on. That's just personal preference to me because I'm never up on Gulf Lane. But it sounds to me like if Gulf Lane were not in the mix, we'd be back down at what the figure was before, close to it. I'm a little confused here.
So the city was only paying for approximately 2 blocks or less of Gulf Lane. When they had designed the remainder of Gulf Boulevard, because of the houses and condos that are on that Gulf Lane part at 135th, they had designed it to go back onto Gulf Lane versus running along Gulf Boulevard. So the penny money was paying for majority of Gulf Lane. We were just covering that 2 block,
Yeah.
which we don't know what that cost is. It was actually supposed to be separated, but I heard from Miriam yesterday that it was actually included in on that cost.
Okay, so see, because what we're doing, we will have pennies for Pinellas money coming in future years. We're coming directly out of our budget to pay for this, to get it done, because the costs are just going up every year. So we want to just knock it out and then put the money as we get it from pennies for Pinellas back into our general funds.
And to your point, and I was going to clarify that too. So just keep in mind, Gulf Lane, the portion that is part of this BCE is just solely to get off the corridor, because there's just not a lot of room. As you know, there's a lot of pedestrian concerns and stuff. And actually even the construction of that is pretty complicated. So what we did is we went back down that side street to get off the corridor. So some of that wouldn't change. Like I said, if a BCE changes, it means the design changes. So they go back to the drawing board, they redesign things, and then they would revise that BCE to get to the number. That's the cautionary portion of that, is that, it could be that you lose quite a bit of time waiting for that to go back. Whereas, you get the amount that is in the budget, I think we can kind of tailor that back and kind of report that on a monthly basis before we go too far down that road. So just, it's your decision. Obviously, we're just, looking at it from, how can we approach this and what's the most efficient way? And, time's obviously an option, but so is the budget's the biggest thing.
Well, yeah, but and I was in hopes this would all be done this winter. Clearly
We were
that
as well.
doesn't look like that's going to happen. Mr. Gomez, can we approach the county? I think all the cities need to have that discussion again on pennies for Pinellas money because
Yes.
costs have just gone up tremendously on getting these projects done.
Yeah, we will do that.
That might be the route we have to go and just bite the bullet and get it done.
Mr. Mayor,
But
if
I would like to see y'all get a sharper pencil on this, see if Duke can help us out because this is helping Duke Energy out as much as it's helping anyone out. So.
And they did, just so you know, with the BC, I'm sure you guys looked at, there is an additional credit that was applied to that is a kind of a lack of word betterment. But for that purpose, because there is a long-term benefit, they don't have to come maintain the lines and things like that. So there was a credit that was applied. Unfortunately, yeah, you can see what is the total? 1.4 million that was credited back towards that work. So, just keep in mind, they are required by the tariff to apply that credit back for that exact purpose. There's a benefit to the power company, so they have to return some of that. So that's what that BCE credit is.
Okay, thank you.
I got a couple of quick things, Ed. Number one, I'm all for waiting until after that meeting tomorrow, even if we have to if it's a timing issue, if we have to get together and have a special meeting on a quick afternoon, I think it's well worth it that we discuss this. Number two, I hate to say this, but I'm against pulling anything out of the project because I think our long-term goal is obviously to get the entire city undergrounded. And maybe our bargaining chip in this agreement is going to Duke Energy and putting together a 5-year, 6-year, I've said this 1,000 times, but 5, 6, 7-year plan of, okay, here's what we're going to do. How are you going to help us? And what is going to be the cost for us now? Because nothing's getting cheaper. And I don't see anything in the near future that is going to cause prices to decline. But if we budget this out over 5, 10 years, and obviously dedicate the pennies per Pinellas money and work with Duke Energy on coordinating with them, it makes their life easier. It makes our residents happy and the internet doesn't go out when the wind blows. I think that that's a plan worth pursuing. And I think we have a little bit more bargaining power in this than we're even looking at if we propose going full force. I don't know if everybody's in agreement with that, but I do think that this is a project that brings us up to speed and brings us a little bit more current with what other cities are trying to do. That's just my opinion. I think the first thing first is though, let's find out what happens tomorrow. I think we're kind of all speculating here that, okay, well, we're not going to be able to lower that price. Or maybe they'll say, oh, well, wait a minute, we got a comma at a place and it's 64,000, not 640,000. So I'd rather hear what that's got to say. And if we got to meet again, I'm all for doing that.
That works for me. And I say we call a special meeting early next week, maybe on the 13th to just discuss this one topic so we can be.
No,
In and
I would
out.
agree. It was mentioned to do a partial. I didn't understand what you meant by that. And how do you do a partial approval?
Well, what I meant in that, and maybe I didn't caveat correctly, was just, we know we have a budget amount of that 2.1, 2.2 was a part of the original budget. We know we're over by that 500,000-600,000 range. So what we're trying to do to them is find out what can we cut back, scale back? Is there anything that we can do to improve those numbers, even to the point where we're going back to our own undergrounding contractors, say, can you take $1 off a foot here? Whatever we can do. It's kind of I think it's going to be a unified effort. I don't think you're going to see Duke's going to be able to come down on that number that much. But what we're going to do is we're all coming to the table to look at some reductions. My only concern, and I think that's a legitimate thing, is let's get through tomorrow's meeting and then come back and see what that actually physically looks like. But, I don't see that number coming down. My concern was not to delay this, so we're not looking at another 6 months, 4 months out. I know when it's just, we'll revise the BC to get the number. Some of the other cities are looking to say, well, we're going to use everything that we have in that fund. We're going to get as much as we can done. That remaining couple 100,000, we'll figure out over the next, same thing. They were thinking next 5, 10 years, let's figure out how to get that in, but we don't want to factor in increases. Let's get what we've got, figure out how to get that managed properly. But just so you know, the effort from our end is looking at every single thing. The carriers, we went back to try to get theirs. That's another component outside of Duke's. Those have come back in favorably. So it's surprising, we got one that got a little bit of an outlier with what the increase is versus the other, but the good news in this is the carrier cost came right in point, maybe a little bit under on one of them. And then, like I said, we're working with a contractor, to even scale back that. We're using, costs that are back from an old Bel Air project that's 5 years old. So fortunately, it's not today's prices for the boring. So that's another thing. We want to keep that, not risk that going up in the next 6 months to a year. So I think we're looking pretty good other than this. And I think tomorrow's meeting will give us a little bit more perspective into that. But I just wanted to assure you, we're looking at that big picture. And to your point, I hate to lose something because it's significant and, it's county contribution. So I guess the thought would be, if we have to peel it back just a little bit to get to that, let's get all that done at a minimum and then figure out the plan. How do we get that last leg done? What would be a good plan to that? So that would be a, consideration.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So a special meeting makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I support that.
And some coordination of what can be done. To Vice Mayor Andrews' comment, let's get everything that we can now. Even if it means more, or maybe it wasn't said that way, I want to be careful with that because we want to underground a lot of areas here. And I'm hoping that we can put together some RFQs and get some grants and work with some companies to be able to do that through some grant process programs that are out there. And we don't want to be using the residents' money if we don't have to.
And to your point, that's something that we've looked at as well. As there's some resiliency grants out there. It's unclear as to whether or not this, but that's what we're looking to. We're thinking, is there some grant out there that can get us to the finish line? Those take times. There's an application process. We do them first. So that's another option so it's a good point. If there might be some initiatives, I like the approach to the county, maybe they could increase that contribution a little bit more. What were those numbers put together? I think like 5 or 6 years ago. So those estimates are dated anyway.
2020, I believe. Probably 2019, 2020.
So those estimates they originally allocated probably aren't sufficient for today's, inflation cost.
So, initially, I heard the figure of 2 million to do all of Gulf Boulevard complete.
That was
And
back in
it-
2012.
Yeah,
2013.
right. That's what I'm saying, though. Every year we put this off is just
It's more expensive.
digging a deeper hole.
Our
So-
binding cost estimate for phase 2, which was from Madeira Way to 144th, was $490,000
So this will get us done. Is that
on Gulf Boulevard.
on Gulf Boulevard? Done.
So you have to
Okay.
meet tomorrow. What other discussions do you have going or what time? When should we schedule the next meeting to review whatever you've learned tomorrow?
We could have Robin reach out tomorrow after the meeting. Because our meeting's tomorrow at 10.
Okay, but you were talking about going back to other people.
I think you've already.
We've already done that. We're just,
Yeah.
we're just asking for everything we can get.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, I think we pretty much have a quorum on having a special meeting and not doing anything, but having a vote next week, I would say.
A week or whenever we can.
How is Monday okay with everyone?
Has to be Monday for me. I'm leaving. I'm out of town on Tuesday through the end of the week.
Monday's a good day for me.
Monday at 2 would be perfect.
Does Claire
Monday
need-
at 2?
Does Claire need time does
Yes.
that have to be notified?
Yes.
They'll need to put everything together right after that meeting, and then we'll get it posted, published, the agenda tomorrow.
You're okay.
At 2:00, did we say? Is that what?
2 o'clock would be perfect for me. Yeah.
Too good for everyone? Okay,
Perfect.
okay. Clara, if you can schedule that and this will be the only item on that agenda,
Yes,
just so we can
that's it.
get it taken care of. And we can vote during that special meeting.
Yes.
So we're good to go. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll call the guards off the back door now.
Appreciate it.
Can we just make the meeting a drive-through?
Any public comment on this?
And I think Megan kind of
What, before you start, come up, state your name and address. And so we know who you are.
Sure. Bob Bello, 13301 Gulf Lane. Just had a quick question. I think Megan alluded to it, about the paving. So if we didn't do this now in Gulf Lane, and I know there's a paving project coming up, would we be paving and then redoing and repaying? And then what's the cost benefit there?
This is not, I understand what you're saying, but this is a comment section of the meeting, not a question and answer. But if you'd like to get with Megan, she can answer all that for you.
Yeah, it's just something for you guys to think about.
Yeah, okey doke. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Cool.
Next is stormwater station generator replacement located at 14101 North Bay Shore. Director Wepfer. Again,
Good afternoon again. We spoke about this at the workshop meeting. This is the stormwater station that is located at 141st and North Bay Shore. That station was rehabbed in 2007 with a new generator that is currently diesel. That generator, the diesel tank, because of sitting directly on the water, is rusting out. So what I'm asking for is to replace that generator with a natural gas versus diesel. It's easier on the maintenance. I think we'll have a longer life out of the generator. And then we would like to rehab the current generator that is there and put it at another facility.
is there any reason we couldn't just rehab that generator, put a stainless tank or a fiberglass tank on it for the diesel fuel?
I would have to get back to you on that.
So when do we use this generator? Does it heavy rains, it happens, it gets used once a month or weekly or?
It depends on the power outages. It depends on the flood level. So if we have a power outage, the generator automatically kicks on with the transfer switch. The station is used quite often. You may not know that it's running, but it is running. So if we have power, then it's running off the electricity. But if we do not, it is generator.
So it's pretty important that.
It's very
this
important,
works.
yes.
I'm thinking to go with the propane, so, or natural
It's-
gas, so that it's more likely to have less problems.
That is correct.
I intimately know the station. It's at the end of my block and I know our power goes out quite often. So having this fixed and having the generator up to speed is very important.
Is it something we want to look at redoing the fuel tank? Apparently, it's going to get redone regardless if you're talking about moving it to the marina.
We are already running a natural gas line to the station in preparation for this generator.
So you're saying that the natural gas generator is more reliable.
That is correct. Less maintenance,
How old is the existing one?
2007.
And this was in the budget.
Yes. It's in the budget. I have $125,000 budgeted, so I'm coming in way under.
I think reliability trumps everything.
Okay, anyone else? Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion for a stormwater station generator replacement?
I move that we move forward with our stormwater station generator replacement located at 14101 North Bayshore Drive.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Taglerini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes,
Mayor Hendricks.
No.
The motion carried 4-1.
Next is new business. Resolution 2023-01 fiscal year 2023 budget amendment 1. Mr. Laughlin?
Mayor, can I read that resolution first?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
please.
So this is resolution 2023-01, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Madeira Beach, Florida, amending the budget for fiscal year 2023. That's October 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. By increasing appropriations for expenditures in the general fund, the local option sales tax fund, the building fund, the stormwater fund, and the parking fund, and providing for an effective date. That was reading of resolution 2023-01 by title only.
Thank you.
So we, sure, so we discussed this in the workshop. These are those situations where a project gets budgeted in the previous fiscal year, was anticipated to be completed in the previous fiscal year, but that didn't happen. So we need to increase the budget in the current fiscal year and roll over those unspent purchase orders. And that's what the vast majority of these items are, as we discussed, as part of the budgeting process. I mentioned the previous year, we were significantly under budget in FY 22, comparing actual expenditures to budget expenditures. And so we're basically shifting, and this is going to happen again in 23, where we're budgeting projects to be complete in 23 that won't, and will move to 2024 based on unanticipated events, such as the item not coming in, shipping delays, the contractor not being ready, those sorts of things. That's what the vast majority of these budget items are. And they're itemized one by one, so happy to discuss any if you have, but I know we've already covered this in the workshop, but.
Andrew, are there any changes to this resolution from the one that we discussed in detail at the workshop?
Nope, identical.
Same one.
Well, the only change is to accommodate the mayor's request. I did increase the font on the exhibit. So there are now only 2 items per page.
Well,
So it's
I'm gonna
easy-
have to
easier
object
to
to that
see.
then, so.
And that did take a half hour of my
Thank you.
time. I
Thank
want the
you.
commission to know that took 30 minutes of my time to do that.
Yeah, that is nice.
It's either that or get us a big magnifying
That's
glass.
true.
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't see the purpose boxes before the last meeting, and afterwards I found that and I went, oh. So that's a good idea.
Andrew still has those young eyes.
Not for long. We'll see how long.
Well, if there's no changes, then I'm okay with this as it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion on resolution 2023-01?
I move we pass resolution 2023-01, fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 1.
Second,
City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Taglerini?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
yes.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes,
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Hendricks?
Yes.
The motion carried 5-0.
Okay, next is staff reports. I see Megan's there's Jay hiding back there too. You got any reports for us? No, Megan? Nope. Okay. Agenda setting, February 22nd, 2023, Board of Commissioners Workshop. Anyone have anything?
Just as I mentioned earlier, just would like to have a discussion on actually the fishing village concept, and if we need to have an architect or do we need to do anything to make sure that that fishing village is maintained down at Johns Pass Village.
That can be handled when the land development regulations come back. It all depends on the timing. The land development regulations are probably 6 or 8 months out because we have to wait for the comp plan amendments to be completed and to be approved. So did you want to deal with them now, even though we won't actually be drafting those LDRs until the end of the year? Or would you like that done prior?
I'd like to have
Just
the
prior.
discussion prior. I mean, there's gonna be, potentially changes, but in the next 8 months, I would think, or proposed changes.
Well, in another 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you're going to have a change up here. So why discuss it now if it really doesn't come up until 6 or 8 months? Wouldn't you want to wait and have the new
Well,
commission
we
discuss
can,
it?
we can put it on, it doesn't have to be on the next one, I guess.
Yeah.
We could bring it, I mean, in May, April, May or June.
You'll still be here. So you can make
Sooner the
sure we-
better.
You'll still be
But
here. so
yeah,
make sure you
I
put it on.
understand, wait until the new board.
I have one, if I may go next. I have been bombarded by dogs on the beach, emails and comments of people coming in the store. I know, I believe the city manager has as well, just recently. I don't have the answer, and I don't know if collectively we could come up with a plan to do so. But, and I know we've beat it to death in every workshop that we have. But it is still a hot topic, and I think, the citizens want to be heard on this, so I wouldn't mind throwing it on the workshop and let's see what kind of feedback we can get. I always said, the complaint department's always open. Just don't come here expecting, come here with a solution in mind, and maybe we can try to work together to figure it out. Robin, have you heard much about this recently?
A little bit.
Yeah, it's coming up all the
With
time.
residents, and I mean, I've told several, we have our deputies actually today and tomorrow that'll be out patrolling, our community policing deputies a little bit more patrolling this afternoon and tomorrow as the weather's a little nicer. We will be adding additional signage, as I stated before, so there'll be just a lot more reasons that people can tell us, oh, I didn't see the signs. They're gonna see these signs.
Commissioner Andrews, I would love to have this discussion. I get bombarded a lot too. And I actually had a couple of residents who gave me a list of some actually decent suggestions. So
We probably got the same one.
maybe I'll be happy to bring them. I would love to have that on the workshop agenda.
The one thing that I know we've talked about in the past, and I think, the thing that we brought up numerous times is I think a lot of the offenders are coming from the condos that are in for the weekend, that don't really know any better, because I doubt the condos have a big sign posted. If we could work with them and try to get them some laminated,
yeah.
Megan's shaking her head, so I was
But
gonna
we do have signs out there. They could, I forget the size, Megan, but.
I have been working on for probably the last few weeks passing out. We purchased 70 signs that are 18 by 24 specifically for the condos. I have probably 12-ish condos that have them posted at the condos. So they all are given specific instructions that they have to post them on their gate going out to the beach, facing inward, because you're absolutely correct. They are coming from the condos. Before, it wasn't as much of an issue because condos didn't allow dogs. Now they're all allowing dogs, therefore people are taking their dogs out onto the beach.
And we're a dog-friendly city,
Yes.
I have,
except just not on the city.
and it's particularly late in the afternoon, and I approached a gentleman once that was out there with his dog from a condo building.
Mhm.
And, just a casual conversation. Where do you live? Right there in those condos. I said, you on vacation? No, I live there permanently. I said, I understand there's a city ordinance about having dogs on the beach. I know. I don't care.
They don't care.
They don't, and that was his attitude. So
We can try what another city does, and since we now have them, then the other, to put as you enter the city, and maybe we'll do it in all 3 locations at some point, is just the variable message board, no dogs on beach, and list what the fine amount is.
yeah, and
Another option we have.
just food for thought. Another 6 weeks or so, I'll be unemployed. And
Dog patrol?
But
I
deputize
could
them, man.
be
Deputize, yeah.
deputized. I've got a paintball gun. I can mark them and the deputies can ticket them.
I don't think that's a good idea.
You don't think that will
Right.
work?
And that was a very nice conversation you had with the
Maybe
guy,
balloons.
because the ones I have with people, they're not anywhere near as nice as that. Like, who the hell are you? Nobody. Go ahead. I just.
Do you know what condo that is so I can make sure that I'm
I
trying to find the
actually-
maintenance guys for each condo.
I'll have to get back with you. I took a picture of it. It's
I have-
buried somewhere in a
Okay.
couple of thousand pictures on my phone.
I have the signs in my truck, so anytime I see the maintenance guys, I give them a sign and tell them exactly how to put it up. And I have a list of every condo I've given them.
I guess Jay, since Jay's right here, do our variable message boards work on the sand, or would they get stuck?
You know, they come and go on 150th. Why don't we just put them on 150th? They'll,
We could put them in the parking lots. on
In the
sand.
parking lot,
Yeah,
yeah,
but not,
Archibald,
I wouldn't
well-
suggest on the sand.
Right.
because I think it's the buildings themselves anyhow, so
Right.
I don't know. what
Well,
they'll
but as
do.
you're walking up and down the sand, you'd see a pretty giant variable sign saying no dogs and here's the fine. But anyway, we need to be a little bit more creative.
You could make me an A-frame to wear.
I did want to add to that, it's not just against city ordinance, it's also a violation of Florida Health Department. Because the beach is considered a bathing area. So the same reason you can't have a dog on the splash pad or at a pool or whatever else also applies to the beach. So it's, you know, I'm not sure what the fine is for the city, but that's another enforceable option for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's, I had never even thought about that. Good point. Okay. So are we going to discuss that some more at the workshop? Is that-
Next workshop.
The last 2 minutes, everybody.
Jay, what did you call that? The state?
That's, the Florida Health Department has a law regarding animals and bathing
Bathing
areas.
areas. I think.
And it's really up for the city. I think it's the city or county or whoever's interpretation to decide whether or not the beach is a bathing area. And per our definition, I think we've said so for that. It's just another thing to, you know, tack on.
Florida statute 24-101. I'm completely kidding, Dave. Don't write it down.
But
Okay.
public pool
Next.
regulations prohibit dogs. That's.
Okay, anyone got anything else for the workshop?
Maybe you can just give us a date now, but building department software, how soon is that going to be available?
I know they're working on it as we speak. I think the latest was March to April. But we'll bring back a more definitive date.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, is that it? Okay, so we've got update ordinance 2020-05. Slow speed minimum wake zone. We've got parking enterprise update, dogs on the beach. City manager's monthly report.
We'll have a update on the fireworks RFP as well. Those are due the 17th of February, so we will bring you an update.
Okay. Anyone got anything else they want on the workshop? Okay. Reports and correspondence, Board of Commissioners.
I just want to thank the board one more time for allowing us to meet early today. Helps me a lot. Thanks very much.
Ray, you got anything for us?
Nothing.
No, I'm good. Mr. Trask, have you got anything for us tonight?
Nothing today. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gomez?
Just Mayor and Commission, I will be absent from the March 8th commission meeting. My apologies, but I will be visiting some schools with my daughter in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
First trip I've ever taken across an ocean, not counting the Gulf of Mexico.
It's the pond.
The
I
pond.
think it's across the pond if you're going there.
But I'm sure staff will be more than ready to handle the items on that agenda.
Okay, and who will be in your chair?
I will place someone here.
Okay. Ms. Van Blargen, have you got anything for us?
I put on the calendar, to my knowledge so far, the certification of the election results will be done the Friday of the week of the election. So I tentatively put on the agenda to have the swearing in at 5 o'clock that following week on the 22nd. And then thereafter, the workshop. See, I think that's what I did. 22nd at 5, and then the workshop at 6 o'clock. So I just need your blessing unless you want to change it and then if something should happen and it's not going to be certified by that time, I don't think there's going to be a problem. I will let everybody know as soon as possible and we can get it changed.
It's fine.
Okay. Is that it?
And I did mention the dates to the other two candidates for District 3 and District 4, and they were good.
Okay. And that's March 22nd, you say?
Yes, sir, Wednesday, the third Wednesday in March. And I've already created the March the 13th special meeting in our meeting center. I mean, February 13th.
February 13th.
It's on there. I've got it already at 2:00. I'm sorry.
Okay. With that, having no more business, this meeting is adjourned at 3:24 PM.